When most Americans thought of World War II, they imagined battles in Europe, naval clashes in the Pacific, or bombing raids over Germany and Japan. Few would have believed that the war, and especially its shadowy espionage side, could reach directly into their small towns across the United States. Yet, during those years, the war effort stretched far beyond the front lines. America not only fought abroad but also managed secrets at home. One of the most unusual and little-known stories from this period was the existence of a hidden prison for captured German spies, built right in the middle of an unsuspecting American community. To understand why such a prison existed, we must step back into the tense atmosphere of the early 1940s. The United States entered the war following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. Before that moment, Germany had already established an extensive intelligence network, hoping to gather critical information about American military production, shipping routes, and technology. German agents, often disguised as ordinary civilians, had attempted to infiltrate American society, blending into the very fabric of towns and cities. The fear of spies was not exaggerated. German espionage was a genuine threat to American security. Some of the most dramatic cases included Operation Pastorius, when German agents were landed on American shores in 1942 by U-boats. Their mission was to sabotage factories, railways, and industrial centers vital to the war effort. Although the operation failed, it revealed just how far Nazi Germany was willing to go to undermine the United States from within. The capture of these agents posed a unique problem. How should America deal with enemy spies discovered on its soil? They could not be treated as ordinary prisoners of war, because their role was different. Spies operated outside the rules of conventional combat. They were not soldiers captured on the battlefield, but infiltrators working in secret. This is where the idea of special prisons for spies took shape. Unlike regular POW camps, which held thousands of captured soldiers, these secret facilities were designed to keep a very small number of high-value individuals in isolation. They had to remain completely hidden, both from the general public and even from most of the military. Only a handful of government officials knew about them, and secrecy was considered absolutely essential. If news spread that captured German spies were being held inside the United States, panic could erupt among the civilian population. There was also the danger that Germany might attempt to rescue them or use propaganda to turn the situation into a political weapon. One such prison was established in a quiet American town that had no idea of the secret it was hosting. The town itself looked like any other in the United States during the 1940s, a place of modest homes, tree-lined streets, and hard-working families contributing to the war effort by rationing supplies, purchasing war bonds, and sending their sons off to fight overseas. To the townspeople, life was difficult but steady. They were aware of the war through newspaper headlines, radio broadcasts, and the letters they received from loved ones at the front. They had no idea that, not far from their own backyards, some of the most dangerous men of the war were being held in secrecy. The facility chosen for the prison did not look unusual. From the outside, it appeared like a typical government or military building, nothing that would raise suspicion. Guards were carefully selected, trained to remain silent about their duties. Supplies were delivered discreetly, and even the comings and goings of staff were timed to avoid unnecessary attention. Every effort was made to ensure that the presence of captured spies did not disturb the rhythm of the surrounding community. Inside, however, the reality was very different. The German agents held there were not ordinary soldiers. Many had been trained in sabotage, infiltration, and covert communication. They were highly disciplined men, loyal to the Nazi regime, and still believed they could contribute to Germany's cause. The American authorities had to be extremely careful. Spies were interrogated to extract valuable intelligence, and their confinement was strict. Unlike POWs who were allowed certain freedoms under the Geneva Conventions, these men faced tighter restrictions. Their very status as spies placed them outside the traditional rules of war. The decision to hold them in America itself, rather than overseas, was both practical and symbolic. It allowed American intelligence officers to conduct interrogations directly, without the need for long-distance communication or the risk of transporting prisoners across dangerous waters. It also symbolized America's determination to confront espionage on its own soil. Just as the country was mobilizing its factories, its farms, and its citizens for the war effort, it was also mobilizing its intelligence and security apparatus to protect the homeland. For the townspeople, the presence of the secret prison remained invisible. They went about their daily routines, completely unaware that a few blocks or a few miles away, enemy spies were being held under heavy guard. Children played in the streets, families attended church on Sundays, and local businesses kept their doors open to supply the community. If any rumors circulated, they were quickly dismissed as wartime gossip. The government's ability to keep the secret so well reflected the seriousness with which it approached internal security during this critical time. But behind the walls of the prison, there was tension. The German spies were intelligent, resourceful, and sometimes defiant. They were interrogated carefully, often over long hours, with the goal of uncovering what they knew about German operations in America and beyond. Each prisoner represented a small but potentially vital piece of the larger puzzle of Nazi espionage. What targets had they been assigned? Who were their contacts? What codes or methods of communication had they been taught? American intelligence officers documented every detail, hoping to dismantle the networks before they could strike again. Some spies cooperated under pressure, while others remained silent. A few may have even exaggerated their roles in an attempt to mislead their captors. The process was painstaking, but it provided the United States with valuable insight into the methods and mindset of the German intelligence services. It was a battle of wits, one fought not with guns and bombs, but with words, patience, and strategy. Even after the war ended, many Americans remained unaware that such a facility had ever existed in their town. Only later, when documents were declassified and historians began to dig into the archives, did the full story emerge. The discovery was startling. The quiet streets they had walked, the schools they had attended, the parks where they had gathered, all had existed alongside a prison that held some of the war's most dangerous enemies. The revelation added a new dimension to the town's history. For the residents, it became a strange point of pride and curiosity. How could such an extraordinary secret have been kept so well for so long? And what did it say about the way America fought the war at home? For the American military and intelligence officers running the prison, secrecy and precision were essential. They were not simply holding prisoners, they were managing a delicate balance between maintaining security, extracting intelligence, and keeping the surrounding community completely unaware of what was happening. This meant that daily operations had to be planned with care. Guards rotated in and out quietly, avoiding large movements that might attract attention. Supplies were brought in at odd hours, using unmarked trucks, so that no one in town would notice unusual patterns. Even the architecture of the facility was designed to look ordinary, blending into its surroundings without revealing its true purpose. Inside the walls, however, life for the German spies was anything but ordinary. The prisoners lived under constant surveillance. Their rooms were plain and functional, designed to prevent communication or escape. Meals were delivered on schedule, but the food was basic and without luxury. Unlike traditional prisoner of war camps, where groups of captured soldiers could gather and find comfort in numbers, these men were often kept isolated. This isolation was intentional. It limited their ability to conspire with one another and kept them dependent on their captors. The interrogations became the central feature of their confinement. American intelligence officers, often working with the FBI and military intelligence branches, questioned the prisoners regularly. Each session was carefully structured. Sometimes the approach was direct, demanding information about missions, contacts, and code names. Other times, it was psychological, using patience, subtlety, and even manipulation to encourage the prisoners to talk. The Americans understood that every small piece of information could prove valuable. A single detail about a U-boat landing site, a half-remembered code phrase, or the name of a contact in a major city could unlock a wider network of espionage. The German spies were not naive. Many of them had undergone training in counter-interrogation techniques. They were taught to resist questions, to provide false information, or to reveal only partial truths. Their loyalty to Germany and the Nazi regime remained strong, even behind bars. But isolation, combined with the stress of captivity, sometimes wore them down. In some cases, prisoners revealed information without realizing its value, speaking casually about details that American officers would later analyze and piece together into a broader picture. The Americans also understood that not all prisoners were alike. Some spies were deeply committed ideologues, utterly devoted to Hitler and the Nazi cause. Others were less fanatical, motivated more by duty or even by coercion than by belief. Identifying these differences was crucial. The less committed spies could sometimes be persuaded to cooperate, offering valuable insights into German operations. In rare cases, prisoners even considered switching sides, helping the Americans in exchange for better treatment or the hope of leniency. Outside the prison walls, the town carried on with its normal rhythms. People went to work in factories, repaired cars in garages, and lined up at grocery stores with ration cards in hand. Children walked to school, played baseball in dusty lots, and ran errands for their parents. News of the war came by radio, with daily updates on battles overseas, casualty reports, and President Roosevelt's speeches. Neighbors spoke about loved ones in uniform, worried about letters that took too long to arrive, and prayed for sons, brothers, and husbands who had been deployed far away. None of them suspected that behind guarded doors, men who had tried to infiltrate and harm their country were being kept in secret confinement. The secrecy was so thorough that even many local officials were unaware. Police officers, town leaders, and even clergy had no idea. The war had taught Americans to accept the presence of military facilities, so if unusual activity was noticed, it was often explained away as just another part of the national war effort. For the spies, captivity in America carried its own psychological weight. Some had believed their mission would succeed, that they would carry out sabotage operations and contribute to Germany's victory. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a foreign land, under the control of the very enemy they had been sent to undermine. The contrast was striking. While Germany fought desperately for dominance in Europe, its agents in America were reduced to quiet prisoners, hidden away in a place where no one even acknowledged their existence. The prison staff faced unique challenges as well. Guards were trained not just in discipline, but also in discretion. They were warned never to discuss their duties with outsiders, not even with close family members. The secrecy extended into their personal lives, creating a barrier between their role at the prison and their role in the community. For some, this secrecy weighed heavily. They lived among neighbors who never guessed the truth, carrying with them knowledge of a reality that could not be shared. In the broader context of World War II, the prison reflected a larger truth about the conflict. Wars are not fought only on the battlefield. They are also fought in the shadows, through intelligence gathering, counter-espionage, and secrecy. The hidden prison was one of many tools America used to safeguard itself from unseen threats. While the public focused on headlines about D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, or the island campaigns in the Pacific, a quieter war was being fought in offices, interrogation rooms, and secret facilities like the one in this American town. It is important to remember that espionage was not one-sided. Just as Germany sent spies to America, the Allies also operated networks in Europe. American, British, and Soviet intelligence agencies infiltrated German territory, recruited informants, and intercepted communications. The difference was that in the United States, the capture of spies was often sensationalized when it became public knowledge. But in cases like the secret prison, publicity was avoided at all costs. Silence and invisibility were the strategies that ensured success. Over time, the existence of the prison became almost a story within a story, a hidden thread woven into the larger fabric of the war. For those who managed it, the task was not about glory or recognition. It was about duty. The guards and officers knew their work would never appear in the newspapers or on the radio. They were serving in silence, contributing to a victory that would be measured in ways the public could not see. For the German spies, captivity brought with it the slow realization that their war had ended long before the official surrender of Germany in 1945. Some clung to hope that their country might still prevail, but as months turned into years, that hope faded. The power and might of the United States, combined with the determination of the Allies, made Germany's defeat inevitable. The prisoners could sense this in the way their interrogators grew more confident, in the news that trickled into their cells, and in the gradual shift of the war's momentum. When Germany finally surrendered in May 1945, the prison's role began to change. The captured spies no longer represented an active threat, but they remained symbols of a struggle that had tested America's ability to defend itself from within. For years, the very existence of the prison was kept hidden, locked away in classified documents. Only when time had passed and secrecy was no longer required did the truth begin to surface. Historians uncovered records, veterans shared memories, and slowly the story of the town's secret began to emerge. For the community, learning about the prison years later was both shocking and fascinating. Generations who had grown up in the town discovered that their childhood neighborhoods had once hidden one of the war's strangest secrets. The revelation turned ordinary places into landmarks of a forgotten history. Streets, fields, and buildings took on new meaning as people realized that, during the war, they had unknowingly lived beside captured spies. The existence of a secret German spy prison inside the United States was tied directly to some of the most dramatic espionage cases of World War II. Perhaps the most famous was Operation Pastorius. In June 1942, 8 German agents were delivered by U-boat to the shores of New York and Florida. Their mission was bold and dangerous: sabotage factories, railroads, hydroelectric plants, and disrupt the American economy at a time when the United States was rapidly building its war machine. The men carried explosives, cash, and detailed instructions. But the operation collapsed almost as soon as it began. One of the agents defected, betraying the mission to the FBI, and within weeks all were captured. The capture of the Pastorius spies shocked the nation and embarrassed Germany. For the American government, it raised urgent questions: what to do with captured spies who were neither traditional soldiers nor ordinary criminals. Some of the Pastorius men were executed after military trials, while others became invaluable sources of intelligence. Their arrests reinforced the need for secure, hidden places to hold captured agents, away from the public eye and beyond the reach of potential rescue attempts. The secret prison in the American town became one such location, a silent counterpart to the headlines of the Pastorius case. Daily life inside the prison was a mix of routine and tension. Prisoners were awakened at the same hour each morning, given simple meals, and subjected to strict schedules. The guards enforced discipline, limiting interaction between prisoners, preventing them from passing notes, and carefully monitoring even the smallest activities. Despite these restrictions, some prisoners found ways to resist psychologically. They maintained a sense of loyalty to Germany, sang songs quietly to themselves, or spoke in code during rare opportunities for contact. Their defiance, however subtle, reminded the Americans that these were not ordinary detainees but trained agents of a hostile regime. For the interrogators, each day was an opportunity to gather information. The process was not one of torture or brutality, but of patience and persistence. Questions were asked in countless variations, and the answers were compared, cross-checked, and analyzed. The Americans were not merely interested in the spies themselves, they were searching for connections. Who else was involved? What networks existed in South America, where German intelligence was also active? Were there sympathizers inside the United States who had aided the agents? The prison served not just as a place of confinement, but as a living source of intelligence. The spies, too, observed their captors. Some were surprised by the treatment they received. While conditions were strict, the prison did not resemble the brutality of Nazi facilities. Prisoners were fed adequately, kept in relatively clean quarters, and given medical care when necessary. For men who had expected death or torture if captured, the American system seemed almost humane, though it was unyielding in its demand for information. This realization sometimes unsettled them, as it contradicted the propaganda they had been taught about America. Meanwhile, the town around the prison continued its life in complete ignorance. The war effort was visible in rationing, in victory gardens planted in backyards, and in the absence of young men who had gone off to fight. Factories in the region worked long hours producing equipment and supplies for the military. Women joined the workforce in unprecedented numbers, taking jobs that had once been considered exclusively for men. Churches organized drives to collect scrap metal, rubber, and other materials needed for the war. Radio broadcasts carried news of battles overseas and patriotic messages urging unity and sacrifice. All the while, the townspeople remained unaware that enemy spies were only a short distance away, held under guard in a building they passed without suspicion. For the American government, secrecy was not only about protecting intelligence but also about preserving public confidence. If news had spread that German spies were being held inside the United States, it might have triggered fear and paranoia. Citizens might have imagined that enemy agents were everywhere, that sabotage could happen in their own neighborhoods, or that the government was not doing enough to protect them. By keeping the prison secret, the authorities prevented such panic and allowed the public to focus on supporting the war effort. Over time, the prison developed its own rhythm. Guards and staff became accustomed to the unusual duty of overseeing enemy spies. Relationships, though professional, inevitably developed between captors and captives. Guards observed the prisoners' habits, their strengths, and their weaknesses. Some even came to respect the discipline and intelligence of the men they watched, though they never forgot their dangerous purpose. The spies, in turn, adapted to the monotony of confinement. Their world narrowed to the walls around them, the questions of their interrogators, and the slow passage of days. The presence of the prison also highlighted the changing nature of warfare in the 20th century. No longer was war confined to trenches, battlefields, and fleets. It extended into cities, factories, and even into the quiet corners of small towns. Espionage blurred the line between soldier and civilian, creating enemies who could blend into ordinary society. The secret prison was America's answer to this challenge, a recognition that defending the homeland required more than armies overseas, it required vigilance at home. As the war progressed, the intelligence gathered from captured spies proved invaluable. Information about German methods of training, communication, and sabotage helped the United States prepare defenses. The FBI used the knowledge to dismantle networks and prevent further infiltration. Some of the details even contributed to Allied operations in Europe, where understanding the mindset and techniques of German agents aided counterintelligence efforts. The prisoners may have been few in number, but the impact of what they revealed was significant. In the broader narrative of World War II, the story of this secret prison remained hidden. The focus of history turned to great battles like Stalingrad, Normandy, and Iwo Jima. The headlines celebrated victories and mourned losses on distant fronts. The public was told about the bravery of soldiers, the heroism of sailors, and the endurance of civilians under rationing and sacrifice. But the quiet, unseen work of counter-espionage, carried out in places like this prison, was left unspoken. It was a silent contribution to victory, important but deliberately kept in the shadows. When the war finally ended, the fate of the prisoners varied. Some were repatriated to Germany, their missions long since failed and their country defeated. Others were held longer, as the United States assessed their knowledge and potential usefulness in the new post-war world, which was rapidly dividing into an era of Cold War rivalries. A few even disappeared into the murky world of intelligence, where former enemies sometimes became reluctant assets. The prison itself, stripped of its most dangerous captives, returned to obscurity. For the town, life resumed as before, with little outward sign that anything extraordinary had ever taken place within its borders. It was only in later decades, when classified documents were released and researchers began piecing together the hidden history of World War II, that the story came to light. The revelation was astonishing to many who had lived in the town during the war years. Some recalled noticing unusual activity, guarded doors, or restricted areas, but they had never guessed the truth. For their children and grandchildren, the story became a fascinating reminder that history is not always what it seems on the surface. Ordinary places can hold extraordinary secrets, and even the smallest towns can play a role in global events. The legacy of the prison is a reminder that war is fought in many dimensions. On the battlefield, soldiers clash in visible conflict. In laboratories and factories, scientists and workers contribute through innovation and production. In intelligence offices and secret prisons, another battle unfolds, one of secrecy, information, and hidden struggle. The American town that once held a secret German spy prison stands as a testament to this unseen side of World War II, a story that remained buried for decades but now enriches our understanding of how the war was truly fought. When the guns of World War II finally fell silent in 1945, the world was left to pick up the pieces of a conflict that had reshaped nations and rewritten the global order. For the United States, the war had been fought not only on the beaches of Normandy or in the skies over the Pacific but also in places few Americans ever suspected. Among these hidden battlegrounds was the secret German spy prison, nestled quietly in an unsuspecting American town. With Germany's surrender, the purpose of the prison came to an end, yet its legacy lingered in ways that would only become clear years later. In the immediate aftermath of the war, the captured German spies faced uncertain futures. Some had already been tried and sentenced during the war, their names etched into the record of military tribunals. Others, still held in the prison at war's end, awaited decisions about their fate. For many, repatriation to Germany was inevitable, though returning to a devastated homeland brought its own challenges. They returned not as heroes, but as failed operatives, their missions incomplete, their loyalty tested in the confines of an American prison. The prison itself was dismantled quietly, its purpose erased almost as quickly as it had begun. Guards were reassigned, records were stored away in classified archives, and the buildings that had once held such significance faded back into the fabric of the town. For most residents, nothing appeared different. They resumed their lives, celebrating the return of soldiers, mourning the loss of others, and adapting to the peacetime economy. The extraordinary secret of their town remained buried, locked away behind government silence and official secrecy. Yet the work conducted inside the prison continued to influence American intelligence practices. The methods developed for interrogating spies, the careful balance of extracting information without compromising values, and the lessons learned from German espionage tactics all shaped the future of the FBI and military intelligence. When the Cold War dawned, bringing with it new threats from the Soviet Union, America drew upon its wartime experiences. The shadow war of espionage, counterintelligence, and surveillance that defined much of the 20th century was in many ways rooted in the quiet lessons of places like the secret spy prison. For the town itself, the story remained hidden for decades. Generations grew up without knowing that enemy operatives had once lived under guard only a short distance from their schools, shops, and homes. Only when documents were declassified, and historians began to explore the forgotten corners of wartime America, did the truth begin to emerge. The revelations sparked both astonishment and curiosity. For older residents, it brought new understanding to memories that had once seemed strange: a heavily guarded building, unusual movements of military personnel, or unexplained restrictions. For younger generations, it became a story of pride and intrigue, a reminder that their seemingly ordinary town had once played a small but significant role in global history. The rediscovery of the prison also contributed to a broader recognition of the hidden dimensions of World War II. While the war is often remembered through battles and leaders, the untold stories of espionage, intelligence, and secret operations reveal the complexity of the conflict. It was not only a war of tanks and aircraft but also of spies and counterspies, of codes and secrets, of hidden prisons in unlikely places. The American town that once held a secret German spy prison became a symbol of this hidden war, a reminder that history is layered, and that truth often lies beneath the surface. In academic circles, the story provided valuable case studies for understanding the balance between national security and civil liberties. The secrecy surrounding the prison had protected the nation at a vulnerable time, yet it also highlighted the extent to which information was withheld from the public. In the years that followed, Americans would grapple repeatedly with the tension between transparency and security, from Cold War surveillance programs to more recent debates about counterterrorism. The wartime spy prison stood as an early example of how governments manage information in times of crisis. On a personal level, the experiences of the prisoners themselves offered insight into the human dimension of espionage. Stripped of their missions and confined in a foreign land, these men faced isolation and uncertainty. Some clung to ideology, others despaired, and a few cooperated in exchange for better treatment. Their stories revealed the psychological strain of espionage, the risks taken in the service of a regime, and the fragile line between loyalty and survival. Though they were enemy agents, their humanity remained, and their presence within the prison became part of the larger human story of war. For the guards and staff who had served in the prison, the memory of their unusual duty remained vivid. Many never spoke of it, bound by secrecy or reluctant to stir public concern. But in later years, some recounted their experiences, describing the strange reality of guarding enemy spies in the heart of America. They remembered the discipline required, the tension of potential escape attempts, and the responsibility of ensuring that national security secrets were protected. Their recollections added depth to the historical record, confirming details that had long been hidden in files and archives. As historians pieced together the story, it became clear that the secret German spy prison was not unique but part of a larger network of hidden facilities and covert operations that defined America's wartime strategy. Other towns and locations also held secrets, from training camps for covert missions to laboratories developing new technologies. Together, these hidden efforts underscored the vast scale of mobilization that the war demanded. The prison in the American town was one small but telling example of how even the most unlikely places could be drawn into the global struggle. Today, the memory of the secret prison serves as both a curiosity and a lesson. For the town, it has become part of its heritage, a story told in local museums, historical societies, and community events. For the nation, it is a reminder of the extraordinary measures taken during a time of existential threat, measures that were once cloaked in silence but now enrich our understanding of the past. The war was won not only by battles overseas but also by vigilance at home, by the quiet efforts of those who guarded secrets, and by the willingness of ordinary places to shoulder extraordinary responsibilities. As we reflect on this hidden chapter, we are reminded that history is never complete. New discoveries continue to reshape our understanding of the past, revealing stories once forgotten or concealed. The secret German spy prison in an American town stands as one such revelation, a testament to the depth and complexity of World War II. It reminds us that even in times of great conflict, much occurs beyond the view of the public, and that the truth of history often lies in the shadows. The legacy of the prison endures not only in the lessons it offers about war and security but also in the sense of connection it creates between past and present. For those who walk the streets of the town today, it is a reminder that their community once stood at the crossroads of global events, its role hidden but meaningful. For those who study history, it is an invitation to look deeper, to seek the stories behind the stories, and to recognize that the fabric of the past is woven from both the visible and the unseen. And so, the American town that once held a secret German spy prison during World War II holds a place in history, not for battles fought on its soil, but for the secrets kept within its walls. It is a story of silence, of hidden struggle, and of the remarkable ways in which ordinary places can be drawn into extraordinary times.